Hey guys, how you doing? Nathan Adlin here with
Tommy Micah.
and we're going live with something very special for you regarding this vehicle and its cousins.
Yep. So as we promised earlier this week, today's live video is all about Jeeps, and more specifically classic Jeeps. What are we doing today?
We're going to talk about the 10 classic Jeeps you need to buy today.
Yep, and excuse my incompetence, this is my first ever live video, so
We're going to be okay. We're going to make this work. Now, first of all, when we say buy today, one of the things we're looking at are other Jeeps out there that you can go off-road in that are really, really good, but a lot of people aren't buying right now. And so this is kind of a buying guide
yep.
for you guys.
And be sure to post your questions in the comment section below.
Yeah, we're going to pause a few times and try to answer some questions as we go through this. And for those of you who are just joining us right now, keep in mind that after we're done with the video, it'll be up on TFL now, and so you can ask more questions later.
And before we get going, I forgot my notebook. Give me one sec here.
He's going to go get his notebook, so while you guys are there. Do we have anybody online?
Yeah, a bunch of people say hi.
Hey, what's up? Hi, guys. Sorry, Tony's new to the whole live thing, so imagine pause button. There, and now
we're back. Sorry about that.
That's all right, don't worry about it.
Okay, so once again, these are the top 10 classic Jeeps you need to buy today if you're just joining. So what's number 10, Nathan?
Number 10 is the Jeep Comanche. What is the Jeep Comanche, you ask?
Well, the Jeep Comanche is internally known as the MJ, and essentially it looks like a Cherokee XJ, so it's the perfectly square front end with the square headlights.
Ah, but it's a pickup truck.
Yeah. Now, this is kind of an interesting story because, as a lot of you know, the Cherokee XJ is a unibody vehicle. But if you're hauling things in your pickup truck, unibodies tend to flex. That's not what you want.
Right.
So what they did is they came up with a structure called a uniframe, which is a rail frame structure to support the bed.
That's right. By the way, I used to own one of these. In fact, this is the only Jeep I ever owned personally.
Yeah, what'd you think?
It was really good off-road. It was really, really super light, and I had the long bed version. There's two different beds that you could get, and I had the big 6.
Yeah, it was like 7-foot and 6-foot beds.
Yeah, I had the 7-foot bed, and I actually lived in the thing for a week. The bottom line is that it's a very light vehicle. It's really easy to customize, and right now they are incredibly cheap.
Yep, but they're becoming more sought after, especially the 4-wheel drive models, which is what you want. Now the funny thing about the Comanche is the early engine had a V6. It was a 2.8 liter, but it was a 2-barrel carb, and it actually made less power than the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder.
Yeah, and the bottom line is that at least back then, the straight 6 was the engine you wanted.
Yep, the 4 liter, that's the one you want.
Yeah, the 4 liter, if you could get that with the manual transmission and the 4x4, it was phenomenal off-road, and it was a really flexible platform. And here's the cool part. Would you believe that the payload on this vehicle is better than almost anything else currently built today?
Really?
Yeah, crazy amounts, over 2,000 pounds. This is a fact, I double checked it, and I remember putting a lot of weight in there. It is super, super built for high amounts of payload. I, once again, really stunned on that.
Well, what was cool about that uniframe is the frame rails, I think, were like 8 inches deep.
Yeah.
Which is crazy on a small truck like that.
Yeah, I mean, it was basically the same size as a Chevy S10 or a Ford Ranger, but it had so much, I mean, the capacity was incredible, and it had the ability to really seriously go off-road.
Yep, okay, number 9.
Number 9. That's the Jeepster and the Jeepster Commando. Go for it.
So these were produced between 66 and 72. 66 and 73. 72 and 73 were the AMC or Commandos. So they were a little bit longer to accommodate the inline 6 AMC engines and the 304 V8. And they also had kind of this bullnose front end.
Yep.
So they got rid of the classic kind of Jeep styling and they went with this more squared off egg crate grille. Those ones are probably not as desirable as some of the earlier ones. But this is a kind of an interesting vehicle, so it was meant to go up against things like the Bronco, even though at the time they were still producing the CJ5, and it could be had in 4 configurations: a pickup, a convertible, a roadster, and a wagon.
Yep.
And the later models, like we said, had the 6-cylinder and the V8 to go up directly against the Bronco, which had the 302, and then the smaller straight 6.
Now what you're finding is a lot of collectors are out there grabbing these, and unfortunately some of them are kind of mix-mashing the parts. So when you go to buy one, you're going to find out that some of the components aren't the right components. So if you want a numbers accurate vehicle, you really got to study it, because a lot of the parts are interchangeable. And I've seen it often where someone decides, you know what, I think I want this to become a pickup truck, and all of a sudden they just cut it, add some components to it, and all of a sudden it's a completely different vehicle.
Right. Well, what's a little bit odd about the Commando was, like we said, they were still producing the CJ5 during this period.
Yeah, but the Commando was a bigger vehicle.
It was,
altogether,
yeah.
so-
And it had all these different configurations, like the pickup truck version.
Let's move on to number 8.
But
Wait,
before we do
no,
that,
But before, oh yeah. Questions?
Ian, do we have any questions?
Yes, do you think that a manual diesel version of the Wrangler, as sold in Europe, would sell well in America?
It's a common question, and yes, actually it would. We know that Jeep's been playing with this for a long time in terms of having them come to the United States. We know that the 3-liter is one of the possible engines that they'll use for it. But until they clear up all their issues with the EPA and all the other stuff with Ram, which is also using the 3-liter, we're not going to see that in a Jeep. So I would imagine once they get that going, they're going to definitely put it into the new vehicle. That's my own personal opinion. That is not coming from any source. It's just coming from me.
Yep, so in JK, in Europe there's a 4-cylinder diesel. In the US we only get the 3.6 liter Pentastar. And there's been talks about the new JL having the diesel.
That's right. Yeah, I've heard about that too.
So we'll just have to wait and see. But that'd be cool.
Any other questions?
It says, I can't wait to see where you guys put the Scrambler and J10 pickup on
Okay.
this list.
Well, let's keep going then.
Okay, here we go. Okay, number 7.
Number 8.
No, I'm sorry, number 8. I'm really having a hard time. Okay, it's the Jeep Gladiator and the, Jeep pickup truck, basically, full size.
Yeah, so we kind of think there's all this hype around the new JL coming out with a pickup truck, or maybe it'll be called the JT, the Jeep truck. But Jeep has been building pickup trucks since, the 50s and the 60s. And the Jeep truck, the Jeep Gladiator, was their full-size truck. There was a J1000 through 3000. And then the Gladiator had this kind of cool upright grille. Really, really cool design. Now, the cool thing about the Jeep truck is there were several different bed options. And the really desirable ones are the 76 through 83 honchos.
Yes. And keep in mind that there were some military variants of this truck as well.
Yes, there were. So think like Kaiser M715.
Yep, that's exactly
Had a
it.
similar design to the
No,
Gladiator.
we almost bought one.
We almost
We were
did buy
that
a Kaiser.
close,
Yeah.
and Roman saw it and fell in love. He falls in love very quickly when it comes to vehicles, you may have noticed. And he was so close, but then he realized that it was missing a lot of components, and we would basically have to reassemble half of the damn thing.
It was like partially restored, but
Yeah.
it was largely incomplete, and it was.
The bottom line is we'd rather get something that runs and is legal to drive, and that thing wasn't. So that's pretty much the main reason why we didn't buy it.
Yeah. So we're thinking the new Jeep Wrangler truck that is going to be coming out within the next few years, hopefully. That's going to compete more with mid-size trucks, right?
Yeah, it's definitely going to. And the reason why is because FCA already has a half-ton, full, big truck, the Ram. So why bother going up to that class? No, right now, the hottest class right now, I'm having a hard practice. Mid-size trucks.
Yeah. But it's important to realize that the Gladiator and the Jeep pickup trucks through the 60s, the 70s, they were full-size trucks.
Yes, they were. And they're right now very collectible. People are buying them left and right and doing cool things with them.
Especially the four-wheel drives.
Oh, yeah. Well, yeah.
Ian has a question.
All right.
Could the JL pickup get around CAFE regulations and have the 5.7 Hemi?
I don't think so. I mean, that's an awful lot of power and weight to put inside a truck that size, so I would imagine not.
Yeah, we don't know if it'll be produced in the U.S.
Yeah, and that's a big Hemi. I mean, the a V6, yeah, absolutely. But
With the JK though, people have been doing the 5.7 and then the 6.1 conversions too.
they've been putting 396s in these things.
Yeah,
It's
392s,
92s, 392s. Yeah. Once again, Nathan nodded off coffee. Okay, let's move on to number 7, which is the first generation Jeep Grand Cherokee.
Yeah, so this is kind of an unusual item on our list. So the first generation Jeep Grand Cherokee was known as the ZJ. They were produced from 93 through 98. And the base engine was the 4-liter straight 6, the ubiquitous 4-liter. Now guys, in this video we're going to be talking about this engine a lot, and it's kind of a legend within the Jeep community.
There are guys who put 300,000 miles on these things.
Oh yeah, they were really bulletproof.
Yeah.
Just a really great engine. There was also the 5.2, and then in 98 there was the 5.9 Magnum,
Yeah.
which was a 1 year only, and it was kind of like a precursor to an SOT8 Jeep.
It was powerful. We actually know somebody who has one.
Yeah, our
Yeah.
friend Dustin has one.
That's right, and
Yeah.
it's a monster, but it's doesn't look any different from the outside, so it's kind of a cool undercover car, so to speak.
But the Grand Cherokee was a pretty revolutionary car for its time.
Yeah, yeah, and he said car, and I know a lot of you guys say, oh no, it's a truck. Well, you know what? Actually, it was a unibody platform.
It
right?
was a unibody platform. Yeah, but I think it was, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think it was the first SUV to come standard with an airbag, which was pretty unusual for the time. There was also a cool edition called the Orvis edition, which was this like deep green, kind of the luxury package. But these are all over Craigslist for nothing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, they have a lot of miles on them, but the thing is that if you can get the 4-liter, that's a really good engine to modify and to bring back up to spec and everything else. Highly recommend it, and a really good off-roader. Really good.
Another Jeep we'll be talking about later in the list is the Cherokee XJ. That kind of steals the thunder from the Grand Cherokee, which was a more luxurious version. But it was a really good platform. They did have some transmission problems through some of the years, so you'll see a lot of them on Craigslist with like bad transmissions.
But it's something that can easily be addressed,
Yeah.
either a brand new transmission or a rebuild. Okay, let's move on to number 6, which is the Wrangler TJ Unlimited.
Yep, so the TJ Unlimited was toward the end of the TJ's production life. As Wranglers go, it went YJ, TJ, JK, and then the new JL. So the TJ Unlimited was essentially a stretch TJ, only available with the 4-liter straight 6, but it also got a Dana 44, 373s, and then the NV 231 transfer case. And these are super sought after in the Jeep community.
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, think about it. It's not quite a scrambler in terms of length, but it was definitely a longer version.
Yep.
And they were popular for hauling. They were popular for people who wanted to bring a couple kids with. And also, they're really popular with people who like a nice ride on the road. They rode better than the
TJs, yeah.
Exactly.
Well, so, the JK Unlimited is a 4-door. The TJ Unlimited was a stretch 2-door.
Yeah.
But people in the Jeep community love these things. I mean, they'll easily command upwards of 15, 20K if you get a Rubicon. Now, the Rubicons also had, upgraded transfer case. You had lockers.
Yeah, and consider it this way. I mean, that's a higher end item that we're talking about in terms of buying and restoring, but in many cases it's worth it. Or if you have one, flipping them, you can make some
You
money.
can make a lot of money
Yeah.
off that. Any questions, Ian?
Yeah, you guys think the new Scrambler will be driving around with the same Pentastar V6 as the current Wrangler, or will try to opt for a diesel as standard?
Okay, so I don't know about that. The Pentastar is still relatively new. It's in almost everything, or options in almost everything FCA builds that's sold here in the United States. I would imagine they're going to keep the Pentastar for a while, but I'm hearing about a 4-cylinder turbo that they
like
may
a 2-liter.
Yeah, exactly. So that may go in there as well. But going back to the whole diesel thing, yes, I believe there will be a diesel. It's a question of when they can come up to a nice agreement with the EPA and make it work. Okay.
We really don't know a whole lot about this new Wrangler truck.
No, everything that we thought was going to be revealed has been pushed back.
Yeah. So we're a little bit in the dark.
Yeah, but we should know a lot more. We're going to the Easter Jeep Safari. I think you're going too, right?
Yes.
Yes.
We are.
We
this
should be
is
learning.
super exciting.
Yeah, it's really exciting. And we'll have a lot more information about some of the Jeep models when we're there. And we'll be driving prototypes.
Yeah, so Easter Jeep Safari is easily probably like my favorite few days of the whole year.
Yeah.
I went last year. We went to the trail drive they do too for journalists after the concept drives.
We're one of the few organizations that goes every year, and it's worthwhile in so many ways. And we're Coloradans. We love off-roading, so going to Moab, it's just an extra treat.
So if you guys are going, we'll see you there.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, let's move on to the next one, which is the number 5, right?
Yep, the Willys wagon.
Okay, and now for those of you who don't know the history and whatnot with Jeep, just understand that the Willys name was the first name that they used pretty much up until they started calling things Wranglers and CJs and whatnot.
Well,
They
so
stopped
yeah,
using the name.
it went Willys and then it transitioned to Kaiser.
Kaiser.
Kaiser changed the name of Willys to the Kaiser Corporation, and then they went to AMC, and then they went to Chrysler in '87.
So the name Willys dates back quite a ways.
Yeah, so the Willys wagon was around from the late 40s into like the early to mid 60s. However, in Argentina, it was produced all the way through the 80s.
Yeah, which is crazy, and they had a lot of different variants in Argentina. So just to keep in mind that this is a older vehicle, but it still had I believe a straight six and a 4-cylinder that you could get.
You had the Hurricane 4.
Yeah.
So, we think of SUVs as kind of being a newish thing, but, Willys was doing this thing way back in the 40s. And it was available in multiple configurations. There was a truck, a panel delivery, and then the wagon, available in 2- and 4-wheel drive.
Wasn't there a Woody version?
I think there might have been like a Woody's version. They were really neat trucks. They were the first Willys with independent front suspension.
Yeah, so
Which was pretty advanced for the late 40s.
Can you go? Sorry, guys, we had a slight technical difficulty, but we should be all right in just a moment. Let's move on.
Yep.
To the FC, one of my favorites, the forward control.
Yeah. So the forward control. Speaking of Easter Jeep concepts, I've done this multiple times now.
Mm-hmm. Mark Allen loves
The
the
forward
forward
control.
control, and he grabs his minions and he goes, "You guys will build me another version of it." Think of the forward control as basically being a Jeep platform that you would sit on top of, like with a
It's a cab over design.
cab over design. That's the word I was looking for.
Yeah.
And not the safest vehicle in the world, but
No.
but they were really cool, and they had a ton of different variants. They had one that they actually had a supercharged diesel. I kid you not. It sounds like a motorcycle when you hear it because I believe it was a 2-stroke, which is crazy.
The cool thing was they were based pretty loosely on like a CJ5. I think a lot of the components are relatively similar, but it was a pickup truck. There were different versions of the forward control.
Tons. There were buses. There were troop carriers. The
Yep.
U.S. Navy had a version of it that they used. There were so many different types, and over in India, they still have a whole bunch of these things running around.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
And there are like different weights too. There's like the
Oh, yeah.
FC150, and then they went all the way up from there.
Becoming a very collectible vehicle, but right now extremely cheap if you buy one that's just basically runs.
Yep.
So keep that in mind.
Anything interesting, Ian?
Well, some people are wondering if we're gonna get a Jeep as a long-term vehicle, but I'm looking right back.
Look right over our shoulder
We
here.
have the JK as a
Yeah.
long-term vehicle.
This is a long-term, longer term.
We've had we've pretty much driven every version of the JK
Yeah.
out there. We had our Motor Mountain USA one, which these guys drove to all 50 states.
Yeah, and that was actually 49 states. We rented one to do.
Oh
Hawaii.
yeah, for Hawaii.
But and that one we kept for exactly 1 year.
Yeah.
We even had a Jeep trailer with that. By the way, if you guys have never seen Motor Mountain USA, it's still out there. Go ahead and check it out on TFL Car.
Yep.
There's 50 episodes, 50 states, actually 51 episodes.
I think there are. Yeah, we drove it to the highest point in every state. That was a fun series.
It was a crazy series and it was a lot of fun.
So we put how many miles did we have in there?
37,000?
37K when we were done with it.
Yeah, we got it with pretty much no mileage.
Yeah,
We
that
just
was
drive it.
awesome. So we have a lot of experience with the JK Wranglers. I had a YJ before the JK.
Yeah, and we may be getting some different Jeeps in the future. You never know in terms of long
We
term.
get a lot of like week testers. Yep.
Somebody's asking thoughts on the CJ7 with the Chevy 350 V8 with only 18,000 miles.
These are very popular conversions of 350.
Yeah, obviously you got a lot more power, a lot more torque, but you also have a lot more weight. Actually, I don't know if it's that much more weight, but I mean, a lot of people like doing them. You know, it's a popular conversion. Another popular conversion was against this vehicle's competitor back in the day, which was the original FJ
Yeah.
from Toyota. They actually were built to hold a larger engine. A lot of people put V8s
Yeah,
in
they
those
put
as well.
350 small blocks in there. Now, speaking of CJs, our number 3 Jeep is the CJ5. Now, the CJ5 is when you tell someone, I'm looking at a Jeep. I think this is the Jeep that almost everyone goes to. This is kind of the pinnacle of Jeep design. So it's been around since the 50s, and it was based on the M38A1, or is strongly influenced on the M38A1 Korean War Jeep.
That's right. Now, this is one of the first vehicles that really does have a designation that's for civilian. So when you see C in front of a J, it's, well, civilian.
Yeah, civilian Jeep.
Yeah.
So the cool thing about the CJ5 is I really think the proportions are some of the best of any Jeep product ever made. I mean, yeah, Nathan disagrees, and we should explain why he disagrees. So they were built between the 50s and the 80s, but they kind of had a bit of a 60 minutes disaster in the early 80s.
Yeah, they tip.
Yeah.
Really easily. In fact, all Jeeps that are based on a platform like that are a little tippy, so you just have to learn how to go around a corner if you're on asphalt. But despite the fact that they were a little bit on the dangerous side, they were extremely capable off-road because they were so narrow.
Yeah, they were narrow. I think they're just stunning. Now, this is kind of interesting. So, I don't know if you can see it on this, but you can always tell a CJ5 and CJ7 apart by the door opening. So on a 7, it's like a perfect U. On a 5, the back of the door opening is kind of tapered and does this little whoop-de-doo. It's just, the design of a CJ5 is so beautiful. It's a shame though, if you go on Craigslist, a lot of them are lifted and they're cut.
Oh,
and then
cut
they're
to
really
pieces.
dangerous because you
Yeah.
got it already narrow. But it's amazing to think, that they produced this vehicle from the 50s all the way through the 80s.
Now, there's one thing that's not on this board that we've been looking at, and that's the CJ6. There was a 6.
Yeah, there was a 6.
We almost bought one,
We did.
and it was a stretched platform CJ5 basically, and they were uber rare, and it's even harder to find one that had a soft top that actually went on them because they were stretched.
They were really long.
They were really long, and they were very popular for industrial vehicles. But every once in a while, I'm hearing about someone grabbing one of these things and updating it and making them look super cool because nobody recognizes it. They look at it and go, "Well, that's not a 5.
Yeah.
It's a 6." Yeah.
Well, the thing about the 5 too is they were built so long and they were relatively unchanged. They were stretched in the AMC years to accommodate the larger engines.
Yeah.
And you could get the 304 V8 in the CJ5, which was that's a big engine for a little platform.
Yeah,
like
but
that.
such a big engine didn't really perform as good as some of the other, engines in its class in the day.
So speaking of these 70s Jeeps, if you're looking at collectability, there were also editions of these models that are more
yeah.
sought after. Think of like the Golden Eagle, which is
Or the Levi's.
Or the Levi's, yeah, being a package. Now the Golden Eagle was kind of interesting. They put this huge like eagle on the hood. It was gold.
Fire chicken.
Yeah, think like Fire Chicken, exactly. And they're sought after. They're often reproduced, so you always want to find one with an original Eagle hood if you can, which is a little bit hard.
They were super rare. Yeah.
And the other one too, speaking of special editions, going back to number 9, we talked about the Jeepster Commando. There was a Jeepster with a Hearst edition, and it's often considered one of the rarest factory-made models ever.
Yeah, it was a very short run.
It was red, white, and blue. It had a bunch of Hearst components on it, and Jeep people go crazy over the Hearst editions if you can find one. But I've never seen one. I've never seen a Jeepster Hearst.
It's really hard to find those, but I mean, if you're looking for a real collector's vehicle, that's a good place to start because they're still relatively inexpensive compared to some of the other ones that are out there. Now let's get to is number 1.
Number 2.
Number 2. What? I am having a hard time counting today. All right, number 2, the Cherokee XJ.
Yeah. So we had to put this on our list. This is on the complete affordable side of our list.
Yeah.
So the Cherokee XJs can be had for, even under $1,000.
Oh yeah, and you can get a good driving one for under $1,000 nowadays.
Yeah, it's absolutely crazy. Now, I think they made like over 3 million XJs. The ones you want are the 4-liter straight 6s. Stay away from the early ones, so like 84 through 86. They were pretty problematic, especially with those 2.8-liter V6s that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, but there's another thing. You can get a 4-door, or you can even get a 2-door.
Yeah, there was a 2-door Cherokee too.
Yeah, and they're basically the same length. I mean, they're really close. It's just that the doors were much longer on the 2-door.
Yeah, and then the thing about 2-doors is some of the body parts are proprietary. So if you're looking at a 2-door, sometimes things like glass is not going to work on a 4-door.
Yeah, and especially on the sides. But keep in mind that these are super cheap right now. Now, they're not the best Jeeps built, but you can make them incredible. There are so many aftermarket parts that are available. And if you want to start out, if this is your first project vehicle and you want to build something up, highly recommend that you start this way because it is so cheap compared to buying something that's like a Wrangler.
So I was talking to some Jeep people about this, and the XJ is kind of interesting because it was unibody, and it did have solid front and rear axles, which is really what you want off-road. And people are just putting crazy things on these things. Think 37s or chopping them up. And these Jeeps were never really intended to be used in such a manner. So you really have to brace them structurally if you want to do that. But a lot of these off-road guys think of these things as disposable. So they'll bolt on expensive bits, they'll break one, and then they'll just take them off, bolt it on another one.
That's right. If you've ever heard the term a dime a dozen, that's pretty much referring directly to this Cherokee.
Some of the later ones, they were produced through 01, are more desirable, especially if you can find like a manual transmission. They will command a little bit of a higher price.
That's right. Now, by the way, I recently saw a whole bunch of them for sale from the U.S. Post Office.
No way.
Yeah, they
Did
were
you
selling.
really?
Yeah, I forgot it was a Bring a Trailer, one of those things, and they're really, really inexpensive. And if you can get them from a fleet, usually they're fairly well taken care of, even though they may have a ton of miles on
Yeah,
them.
that is the thing too. A lot of them have just been thrashed. So the really cheap ones, you have to be a little bit wary
Oh,
of.
and check for rust.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, it's pretty nasty. Okay, now we can go to number one.
But before we get to number one, Ian has some questions, and we have an unboxing actually today.
Okay, so let's go to the questions.
Yeah.
Is it worth getting a brand new Jeep rather than getting an old YJ or Bronco and modifying it?
Well, it depends on what you're going to do with it. I mean, some people are really serious about going off-road every weekend, and if that's the case, definitely get something that you can modify and that you know intimately. That way, if you have a problem on the trail, you know how to fix it.
Right.
The other way is that if you're really not that serious about going off-road that often, a new vehicle is probably what you're after, because if it's your primary motive of transportation, you don't want to beat the crap out of it right away.
Yep, so I actually had this exact kind of question in my mind. I used to have a 95 YJ that was lifted, and I had a bunch of stuff done to it. And it was great, I loved it, but I was daily driving the thing, and having a warranty, having, modern safety and convenience features really goes a long way. And the funny thing is this Jeep is not lifted like my YJ was, but it'll completely outperform it on the trail.
Yeah, and also keep in mind that his other one had a 3-speed automatic transmission.
Yeah, that was miserable.
Yeah,
I think that was probably the main reason we got rid of it.
The worst
It
part
was
of that
also
thing.
developing a rod knock. But yeah, that was miserable. We can keep going on questions. I'm going to start unboxing
We're
this.
doing great on time.
Any word on a fixed windshield on the next gen Wrangler?
Yeah, we've been hearing rumors about that, and there's been more than one hint from the Jeep people themselves saying, you know what, it's not something that anybody really wants anymore because they're no longer used the way they used to be used. They're not a safari vehicle per se. We actually know guys, say from Jalopnik, who took the damn thing off altogether. What they tried to do is they first put the window down, and it rattled and bounced around. That's why you have those rubber grommets on the hood, by the way.
Yeah, these little things there.
Yeah, and that's the whole purpose of those is so you can put the window down and they won't smash on the hood. Well, it also screws everything up because once you put it back on, none of the screws quite align. All the waterproofing is not working the same way. It's all screwed up. You have to take off the windshield wipers. So yeah, all the stuff that they used to do with it, they're kind of saying, well, this is silly. We should make it more structural and not have it fold down anymore, which may help for rigidity and it may help for safety.
If you go back to like the 60s, 70s, CJ5s, even the flat fender Jeeps, they were so simple to pull the windshield down. It would just be a couple of twist knobs, literally, and then it would fold down. But ever since we've gone to the more safety-oriented family-style roll cages, where the roll cage meets the top of the windshield. Especially in a JK, it's a pain in the butt to fold the windshield down, and apparently, like you said, you can never get it to reseal.
Yeah, once you get it back on, I hear that it rattles and everything else. Another thing to keep in mind is nobody's going to have a Thompson 45 aimed out of a window and shooting, which is one of the reasons they actually did that, is so you could do that or put a cargo in there that was super long. It's not necessary anymore. Well, I mean, maybe in some places it is, but it's not necessary here.
Yeah, so let's get to this unboxing. Ian, do you want to start panning and things? So our friends at Webasto, they're kind of a new company in the Jeep scene. This is one of their new products. We're going to be bringing this to the 2017 Easter Jeep Safari, which is one of our favorite events of the year. Now this is a fridge. Something that we always struggle with out on the trails is coolers, ice melts, things get soggy. With a portable fridge like this, we won't have that issue. So this is going to be an unboxing.
All right.
Let's pull this over.
Oh, you didn't even pre...
No, this is live as live.
Well, use those college muscles, kid. There you go.
There we go. Yeah, so this will be a super great addition to our fleet of
What's the name of the company again?
Webasto.
Webasto.
Yes. Okay. Here we go. Grab my scissors here.
Right here.
Thanks. This is called the Fridge Freezer 31. They also do more trail accessories for Wranglers. They do soft tops as well. That's kind of the big thing, is they've been doing soft tops for a long time in the automotive industry. Wow, look at this. This is cool. This is actually a pretty beefy piece of kit here. Would you mind holding that down?
Go ahead.
The official TFL way of getting things out, I guess.
No, if your dad was here, he'd be throwing it against the wall by now.
Here we go. Wow, take a look at this, guys.
Ooh, it's big.
So it's pretty beefy, as you say, Nathan.
Yeah.
We've got some indents here at the top, temperature controls on the side, and then the actual cooler, we've got a nice little strap here to keep it from flying open. And then looks like we have here is wall plug and then adapter for like a cigarette lighter in a car. Nice.
Yeah, that's really cool. And it looks like, yeah, let me see here. Yeah, I mean it's about the size of a standard cooler, but it's
A little bit heavier, obviously, because
Yeah.
it's an actual fridge. That's cool. So you've got temperature controls here.
yeah vent here, so
Nice.
it's actually got a fan and everything else.
Yeah. So we'll be playing with this on the trails.
We'll give it a little bit
this
of a
year.
review once we get it on the trail.
Yeah. Exactly. Do we have any other questions, Ian?
Yeah, let's do a little Q&A here.
I know.
Why do you guys always have a Hellcat?
Because we love it. I mean, who asked that question, by the way?
Kyle.
Kyle.
Dixon.
Kyle, okay. Well, we bought that. We own it. It actually says TFL car on the back of it. And granted, it's not the best car to drive during the winter, which is why during this time of year you're going to see it in here a lot. But we've used it to do a whole bunch of videos where we compare it to other sports cars that are out there, other cars that are out there in general. And it's just a hell of a fun toy to have. So that's why we have it. I mean, because we want it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, we're excited for the new Demon. We're gonna see what that's like. That's gonna be a.
It's going to be a monster.
Yeah, somebody asks, are you guys going to be there?
Andre's gonna be there.
Andre's going to be there.
Yep. So the rest of the team's gonna be at the Easter Jeep Safari because they happen at the same time.
Right, New York Auto Show is what he's talking about, and that's where they'll unveil the Demon.
Oh, yeah.
And they may have some Jeep products to
Yeah,
unveil
the
as
Track
well.
Hawk was confirmed is gonna be coming out
Yeah,
in
so
New York.
and hopefully at the same time we'll have it in the Easter Jeep Safari. What they do is they unveil it exactly at the same time usually as they unveil it in New York. So
Yeah.
Somebody
We'll
asked Grand Wagoneer drivetrain rumors.
yeah, there's a couple rumors out there. I had it so wrong. Initially, I thought that it was just a stretched version of the Cherokee, and then I thought it was a stretched version of the Grand Cherokee. This is an all-new platform now. So I'm hearing that V8s are very possible, and then
Maybe diesel.
maybe the diesels. So that's all I got. I mean, there's precious little information on those vehicles.
Jeep is really keeping things under wraps recently.
Yeah, it's crazy. Normally we were pretty good about figuring stuff out, but now all their cards are being played close to the
They're
chest.
really, yeah. Well, you know, we've got Ford. You know, they announced they're gonna have a new Bronco. So
This is definitely stirring the pot, and a lot of people now are. I mean, Jeep. I don't think they're that concerned because I suspect that this is still going to be a little bit more like the Ranger than it would the Wrangler.
well, what's kind of unusual about Jeep, especially the Wrangler, is, you know, this vehicle has, for the last 20 years, pretty much been in a segment all to itself. You know, back in the 60s, 70s, there was the Broncos with the removable top, four-wheel drive.
Yeah.
You know, we even had Blazers.
Yep.
And
International.
nowadays, yeah, International, that's a great one too. You know, the Scouts. Nowadays, it's kind of just a Wrangler that's in the segment of fun off-road convertibles. I mean, there's no other vehicle that I know of, convertible SUVs, where you can pull the doors off and go crazy off-roading and
Or having solid front rear axle.
yeah, it has the aftermarket support. So, you know, they're really going to have to progress the Wrangler going into the future, because JK's been around since '07, and it keeps soldiering on, and it keeps selling like crazy.
Like crazy. It's one of their best-selling vehicles. They sell every single one they build immediately.
But they're going to have to start looking at cafe numbers, efficiency,
Yeah.
and also, you know, I think it's going to be a good thing for the industry, because a lot of people that have JKs will probably look at upgrading to the new JL.
Could JKs make it to 300,000 miles easier than older models?
Could JKs make it to 300K easier than older models?
Wow,
That
that's a
is
tough
an
one.
interesting question.
You know, that's a tough question. I would say I don't think so. I don't think they would quite make it that far. And it's not because of the hardware. It's because of little things like the software, the computer controls
Yeah.
and whatnot. I think most of the vehicles that are built nowadays really have a shelf life of 150,000 miles. That was unheard of years ago. But the other side of it is having a straight six, that thing lasts forever. I've seen it firsthand, testimony that you can go well over 200,000 miles on one of those things as long as you take care of it.
I think the fact of the matter is, if you look at reports, you know, Jeep's reliability has been below average for
Yeah.
a while now, and this is something they're really going to need to work on going forward. We've had no problems with my Jeep here. It's been great, but I only have 8,000 miles on it, so
But
I'm
you
not-
have taken it off-road a few times
Yeah, a lot.
too,
It's
and
been
banged
off
it
for a
around.
while.
So.
But that's a really interesting question, because all the new Jeeps are, you know, the computer controlled. They've got ECUs, they've got complex electronics in them. Whereas something like a CJ with the AMC straight six, you've got a carburetor.
Yeah.
Right. You don't have any stability control.
Mechanical fuel pump too, and all that. I mean, it's something that is you can fix on the trail and keep it going. And as I said, I've heard a lot of stories, and I've seen it personally of long-lasting straight sixes.
Granted, you're probably going to be fixing it more.
Yeah.
Than
Yeah. You'll be tinkering with it.
And of course, we can't forget like the XJ, which we just talked about. If you're just joining us, we're doing the top 10 classic Jeeps you need to buy today. The Cherokee XJ had some years where they had a Renex computer control system, and some of those early, like think OBD1 systems, weren't very good.
No. In fact, they couldn't communicate with other systems.
Right.
That was the problem, and so you couldn't plug them into your local garage.
Well, the thing is, if you look at Wrangler, YJ went from 87 through 95. TJ started production 97. So there was no official 96 year of Wrangler. And the reason for that is emissions mandates required manufacturers to go to OBD2, while YG was running OBD1. So rather than go through and re-engineer the OBD1 systems on YJs, they took that year off and then just started OBD2 in the TJ Wrangler starting from 97 through 06.
Now, there were systems where you can get a converter and actually turn it into something that will be read through OBD2.
Oh, interesting. That's interesting.
Yeah, they existed, but they didn't work very well.
Yeah, it's just a primitive system.
Yeah,
is
yeah,
what
it
it was
really
down
was.
to. I had an issue with my YJ where it didn't pass emissions, and I took it to our shop, and they said it's very difficult. Luckily, they had one, but it's very difficult to find mechanics that can read an OBD1 system.
All right, anything else?
Is Wagoneer unibody? And is the Wagoneer going against the G-Wagon and Range Rover?
Yes and yes, I think. But
And
I mean,
is the Wagoneer based off of the Dodge Power wagon?
No, I don't think so.
That would be cool.
That would be freaking awesome. No, as far as I know, it's going to have its own in fact, they said it will be its own dedicated platform. It will have its own dedicated components, and it will go up against the higher end vehicles. So I think it will go. I don't think it's going to go up against, say, the Bentley, but was it a Bentayga? But it will probably go up against Range Rover.
Speaking of Wagoneer, well, let's get back to our list. Number 1 is the Wagoneer SJ.
Yeah, I forgot about number 1.
So the Wagoneer SJ was in production for so many years. I've got the exact numbers here. What's crazy about this vehicle, it was around in the Kaiser years.
Yeah.
It was around in the AMC years. And then it was even around in the Chrysler years when they bought Jeep from AMC in '87. So this is just bewildering how long this vehicle was in production. 62 through 91.
Now,
62 through 91.
there have been some real changes with that vehicle
Yes,
during
of
that
course.
time, though.
Yeah.
But I mean, I believe, didn't they have the fake wood paneling on that one?
Yep, so the late ones were called Grand Wagoneers, especially toward the Chrysler years. And they were actually luxury SUVs.
Yeah.
They were top of the line for the 80s and early 90s.
They were the only vehicle that really could compete against Range Rover in terms of luxury SUV at the time. Nobody else had anything like
Yeah,
it.
and in a large, in a way, they started that segment.
Yeah, they
The
really
luxury
did.
SUV segment that we see today was largely founded by the Jeep Wagoneer SJ.
And Range Rover. But if you look at the two of them and you combine all the information that they provided, you can see how all the other automakers came up with their own versions. But there was a point in time when the Grand Wagoneer had leather seats that were power, and it had a nicer stereo system, good carpeting and everything else, and it
Right.
was
Wood
basically
paneling?
Yeah, wood
That was
paneling.
the thing.
Oh, by the way, there's a guy out there. He's got his own little mini thing going on where he takes those, strips the old crappy stuff off them, and actually makes a veneer
Wow.
out of wood and puts it on there, turning them into true woodies.
So, Wagoneers are incredibly expensive today.
Yes, they're commanding huge prices right now, and what people are doing is they're turning them into resto mods where all the components underneath the skin are new or have been completely revised, and they drive great once they do that, and they can run forever and blah blah blah, as opposed to the older setup, which was, well, frankly, not as good.
Yeah, but it's interesting how much money they've been commanding within the last couple of years. Like easily
50
over
grand.
25K for a good one. Restored ones, the sky's the limit.
Yeah,
like you
50
said.
grand is one I saw at an auction.
Did it die?
We still there?
No, just removing
Another technical glitch. Okay, any other questions? Let's get to it.
Okay. Do you think the new Bronco will stop the FX4 package or go with a Raptor type option to compete with the Rubicon?
You know, that's a good question. You're not the only one who asked that. And it's a smart idea for Ford to do. Right now, they own the segment in terms of desert runners with the. Are we okay?
Yes.
Yeah, Ian's playing with the cameraman. They should do it, but we have heard nothing. We've heard precious little about that vehicle. All we know is that it will come out after the Ford Ranger comes out, at least for the North American market.
Yeah.
We know nothing else.
And we're about at 39 minutes.
Okay.
Anything else?
Is there a way to maintain fixed software issues on modern Wranglers as they develop?
Well, yeah. I mean, one of the things you can do nowadays is that you can flash, certain systems, or you can simply replace them. The cool thing about it is that they're much more modular than they used to be,
Yeah.
and you could actually just remove a component, replace a component, and have a new computer. I'm not saying it's cheap, but yes, in many cases you can fix those things in a day.
So the first year of this JK Wrangler was 07, and they had a lot of issues actually. They had a lot of electric gremlins. They also had a pretty cruddy motor. The Jeep purists were just horrified in 07 when they went from the 4-liter straight 6, which was the ubiquitous Jeep engine. They produced like 3 million of the units, to the 3.8-liter V6 in the Wrangler, which was kind of a boat anchor.
It was bitterly hated.
It was not well received. It was known for burning oil.
Yeah, but they did make them better. They basically found the problems.
Yeah, they did.
It's a minivan engine, basically.
But 07 Wranglers you kind of want to avoid. And then in 2012, well, in 2011 they went to a new interior. 2012 they went to the 3.6 Pentastar, which is a much better engine.
Yeah.
So speaking of kind of value propositions in the Jeep brand, let's talk about some good values out there for Jeep products, within the last 10 years, 20 years.
All right, well, you start. And then we're referring to actual components, right?
No, we're talking about whole vehicles.
Whole vehicles, okay.
So, I think a vehicle that's really kind of undervalued in the Jeep lineup that maybe Jeep people need to take another look at is the first generation Jeep Liberty. And I know, don't start throwing things at me, but the Jeep Liberty was pretty capable. It was still body and frame. I think it still had a solid rear axle.
Yes, it did.
And you could still have it with the manual transmission. You could even have it with a diesel. There was a CRD Liberty as well.
Yeah, that's right. And that was actually a Mercedes source component inside.
And yeah, they get a lot of hate as being kind of a minivan. But off-road compared to something like a first generation Compass or Patriot, Liberty is going to be better.
Yeah, the Liberty is still basically a true truck, so to speak. It's more Jeep than it is car, whereas in the Patriot and the Compass are basically cars. Now, there's a couple things. First of all, they're very hard to lift. There's only a few kits out there that lend themselves to lifting the vehicle. And even if you do that, the geometry gets all screwed up. You really have to study the vehicle, make sure that you talk to people who know before you play with them, because frankly speaking, you just throw a lift on there, you can really mess up your front end and your steering. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Another thing to keep in mind, they were a little bit on the tippy side. They were a high roof vehicle, but there were some cool things that they had, including they had a fabric roof section that you could pull back, and then they had a Renegade edition, which had
like light pods,
cool light pods, and it had a unique suspension, and it was very capable off-road for the vehicle that it represented.
Well, think about it. You had a lot of the components you need. You needed a low range, which they had. You needed body on frame, which they had. You needed good ground clearance, which they had. And I know the go-to kind of affordable Jeep is the Cherokee XJ, but the Liberty offers you some more comforts and convenience in a newer Jeep. But yeah, I mean, you do have to deal with the hate from the Jeep community and the lack of true dedicated parts.
Yeah. Now there is another vehicle which in some cases receives some hate, but I've actually recently driven a whole bunch of them, and that's the Jeep Commander, which is basically, think of the Jeep Commander as an extended or stretched Jeep Grand Cherokee.
Yeah.
And in terms of all the components were the same, and they stopped building them, I think, in 2012. I'm going to say.
Okay.
Around then, and for what they were very decent in terms of going through snow, especially if you had the higher end off-road system. You could actually take them off-road a little bit. And yeah, there are some that are lifted. They're not the easiest things to lift in the world, but you can do it. And solid rear axle in the back, and fairly capable altogether, especially if you had the bigger V8 engine. So you could get the V6 in them, but they're extremely slow if you do that.
So there was a V6 and there were two V8s, and then the one you want is the Quadra Drive 2, which had the low range, it had some skid plates, and then it had like a Jeep brake lock differential system, front and rear, which would try to mitigate the slippage if you're in a situation with articulation. They were pretty capable. They also had like the command view seating, or stadium seating. That's what it's called.
Came standard with 3 rows of seats.
Yeah, that's cool. So the rear seats were higher than the front seats, so you had kind of this cool seating position. You also had these skylights on some of the models.
Yeah, some of the models had the skylights and it was like the higher end packages that had that.
Yep.
And I was shopping recently for a replacement vehicle, and I needed 3 rows of seats. I needed it to be 4-wheel drive and good in snow, and I wanted something beefy, and that was definitely one of the possibilities. So I've been going all over Colorado test driving them. And one thing I really enjoyed was the fact that they really did drive like a Grand Cherokee. It felt like it. Really good on-road matters. And actually, handling for such a big, heavy vehicle wasn't too terribly bad.
But the interiors were pretty cheap.
The interiors were cheap. The later models had a much nicer interior, but the seats were very comfortable.
Mid-2000 Chrysler. Okay, any final questions, Ian?
Yes. Give me 1 second. Will the payload of the Wrangler improve in the JL?
I don't know.
That's a really good question, but we just have no. Here's one thing to keep in mind. I would imagine that everything that the new vehicle will have should be able to be better, if not the same.
Theoretically, the numbers will be higher than the JK. We think. We know it's going to be body on frame. I think they've announced solid axles, several different engine options.
We've seen a bunch of prototypes. You can go to TFLcar.com
Yep.
and see a whole bunch of prototypes that we've been chasing around, taking pictures and video of.
Yep. Anything else, Ian?
Let's see here.
Here with us. What he's doing is while we're asking, he's scrolling through
comments. This is pretty cool. I'd love to see this. We've been talking about this with the Power Wagon. I'd love to see a Wrangler that would come standard with a winch from the factory. That would be so cool to have a winch from the factory. Now the Power Wagon we have outside does have a winch from the factory.
That's right. And by the way, that's my baby. I love the Power Wagon.
Nathan really wants the Power Wagon.
I do.
It's too big.
It's not. And it's really not. And the thing is, I agree with you. They about the Jeep. They really should have a winch package that you can get, but just have it on the vehicle. But Mopar has that, and JeepParts.com or whatever, they have that, and you can.
Well, they've got like the Jeep or the winch-ready bumpers in the Hard Rock, for example, the 75th. But just stick one in there. I mean,
well, there's more than that, though. What did you have to do in order to put this thing in there? There was a lot more than just putting the bumper on.
Yeah, it was kind of a pain in the butt because I had to level out the suspension too. So I have a Best-Cut bumper and then a Warren Z Antennas Platinum, which is a wireless control. I think that would be a cool new feature.
That is cool, but didn't you have to do something with the suspension too?
Yeah, so when you see a lot of like Jeeps running around with winches where the front end looks like it's trying to kiss the ground. They really sag, so I had to put spacers in the front of this Jeep. The next thing I'm going to do, hopefully before Easter Jeep, is I want to do a set of Rubicon springs from a Hard Rock, or from an Unlimited.
The reason why is eventually the springs, the space that he put in there, it'll start to sag. So it's a good temporary measure, but in order to really fix it, you need to get the real.
I got to do it.
Yeah, you've got to go and put the springs in there.
Okay, maybe 1 or 2 more, Ian?
Let me see here. Just a lot of comments.
That Power Wagon has a Warren winch too, doesn't it?
Yeah. It's unique. It's a shorter length. It's not 120.
Oh,
it's
is
like
it?
90.
Is it 90?
Yeah.
And it's.
Why won't Toyota bring the Hilux to the U.S.?
Well, because they already have, the Tacoma, which is built here. Understand that the Hilux is built overseas, and there's already a chicken tax, and it may actually get worse in the near future. So bringing something that's built overseas here, when we already have a perfectly good pickup truck, doesn't make a lot of sense. The Hilux is a really good vehicle, and there's a lot of components it has that ours doesn't have. However, in terms of overall price, it just doesn't make any sense.
Like a diesel.
Yeah. Although they need a diesel. They so need a diesel.
I wish that the Power Wagon had a synthetic line instead of a steel line.
Yes, I do too.
That would be cool.
But, in terms of what it is and the fact that it comes standard with it, we've actually used it a few times now, so it's cool to have. I try to find excuses to use it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Well, I think we're good. Are we good, Ian?
Okay. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining Tommy and I.
Yep.
I mean, we really enjoyed it. And sorry that I was so slow this morning. Nathan needs more coffee, and that's what I'm going to be getting right now. So, hey, if you have any more questions, put them down below. And once this becomes an actual video very soon, we'll be able to answer those questions as well.
And keep in mind, we do live videos here at TFL Now, Monday, Wednesday, Friday at 10 a.m. Mountain Time. So use that to kind of figure out Mountain Time, yeah. To log on, leave us comments, we'll answer them. Thank you, guys.
See you guys.